It's just about making it a priority and being committed to your dream. Because there comes a point in time where you have to reach a pain threshold. It's like, can I keep working this job that's sucking the life out of me, is soul sucking, is not what I want to do, is repetitive, or, whatever, for the next 40 plus years of my life? And if the answer is no, it's time to start doing something now about it and getting that side hustle going. And it's okay if your side hustle takes a bit longer than what you think. At least you're not giving up, and just settling for a life you're not happy with.
Hi there, this is Sarah Kuhn. If you are an INFJ or in a relationship with an INFJ or related to an INFJ in any way, and you want to figure out how they operate, what makes them tick, and how to communicate with them better, this is the show for you. It's called The Quiet Ones. This is a show that deconstructs INFJs, what they are, how they think, how they feel, how they operate, and how they relate to people with other personality types. Whether you have just found out that you're an INFJ or have known for a number of years, there is something for everyone. You will learn more about your personality type so that you understand who you are and understand how you operate in the workplace, in relationships, in your family, and with friends. I want you to walk away from every episode feeling like you have a place of belonging, feeling like you are no longer alone, feeling like you have a place to be heard and seen and understood as you really are. This is a place to connect with other INFJs, to learn and grow and really thrive. I want to give you inspiration and real life strategies that are going to help you figure out how to live your best life every single day. Though INFJs are very rare, you are not alone in this world. You are not the only one who thinks the way that you do and feels the way that you do. Hear from real INFJs just like you. Hi there, I'm Sarah Kuhn. Welcome to another episode of The Quiet Ones. This week we are doing something a little bit different. I've interviewed so many amazing people this year, and I wanted to take a look at some of the best advice that I've heard about INFJs and what's the best career advice for us. How do you start your own business, especially if you want to have a blog or a podcast, or if you want to be a life coach? Before we get started with that, I want to tell you about this amazing challenge that I'm doing. So a lot of people ask me, how do you start a blog? I run into a lot of INFJs who want to write and to have their own blog and business, but they don't really know where to start. So I put together this free challenge that will walk you through everything you need to know about starting your own blog, everything that I did to start my own blog as well. I'm going live on Facebook every day from Monday, July 6th through Friday, July 10th at 7 p.m. Eastern. And we're going to discuss how to have a life rich in purpose, how to overcome imposter syndrome, how to show up and provide immense value, how to believe in yourself and take massive action right away, and most importantly, how to turn your blog into a full-time career and make real money. I'm sure that's what a lot of us want to know. I'm also going to talk about building your social media following quickly. I've built my Instagram account from absolutely nothing to over 50,000 followers in under a year. And I'm going to show you exactly what I did so that you can apply the same method and build your account as well. It's really, really easy. Trust me. If you want to sign up, please go to infjwoman.com/blog challenge to sign up. There's a link in the show notes. Also, if you go to infjwoman.com, you will find the link on the front page. Last week, we looked at why the traditional 9-to-5 doesn't work for INFJs, how to find your purpose, and how to get past perfectionism and our need for control. In this episode, we're diving into how our feelings are our superpower, how to build your business network, and how self-love is the key to unlock everything. All right, let's get started talking about how to build your own business as an INFJ. Business coach Casey Ellis tells us how our deep INFJ feelings can be our superpower. And so when you talk about business, especially a lot of INFJs have a big interest in starting their own business. But I think a lot of us are concerned because we're introverts. Can we even be good in business?
Yeah. I mean, if I just get one answer, short answer, yes. Let me tell you why. So we are deep feelers and we care so much about authentic connection. That's like our thing. So, and that's exactly what people need in businesses. They need people that actually care, that are on their side when we're dealing like with customers and clients. So, and INFJs, we're so sharp and smart, and this selflessness and devotion that we have is inspiring and it's loving. And these are the kind of people that we need in business. Like, we need people helping other people. So, and also we're kind of led to believe that we have to be extroverted, right? We kind of talked about that. And you have to be outgoing, you have to be a go-getter or a cheerleader type to do well in business. And there's nothing wrong with those types, but we're taught in business that you got to just go get it all the time, right?
Right.
But that's not at all true. And it's really a myth that's made up. And I think it's because people don't understand introverts. So they kind of feared them, or they avoided hiring them. So they always just said, we need the extrovert type, the go-getter, the self-starters. It's just because they didn't really understand why or how they're so valuable. So it's not so much your personality type or your style that's important, it's your intention. And that's what's good for business. So along with your intention, you have to want to help the people that you're serving. By providing a service or making something, you have to just want to help them and solve their problem. You have to want that for them. That's really the only basis of business. So now, and I'll also answer this with the assumption that that question is more about all of the work needed to run a business, not just if an introvert's good for one.
Right.
If there's something you can't do, or you don't want to do, or you don't like doing it, or maybe it takes too much energy too fast, because that's an issue for us, hire it out. Like, you don't have to be Superwoman or Superman. You don't have to do everything. We're taught that it's so noble to do everything. It's not. It's scary. It's not good for us. So provide other people the opportunity to do some work for you is what I like to tell people. But we're problem solvers, so we're going to figure it out, and we're great at helping people. So business, we need introverts and we need INFJs for sure.
Introverts are truly a hidden gem in the business world. But what if you want to start your own business or side hustle, but you don't know where to actually get started? Business coach June Morrow tells us exactly how to start.
When you're first getting started, one of the biggest things is, where do I start? Like, what do I even do? One of my good friends has like 12 different ideas of what she can do, right? And she's like, well, I want to write, but I kind of want to draw. And I really think that I would be a good life coach. And I'm really good at holding people accountable. And so her biggest problem is that she can't figure out where to even start. And I know that's a really broad question. So I'm leaning on you here. Where do you even start?
Okay, so this is where you start. You start with listing everything that you're interested in, right? So step one is put everything down that you're interested in. Step two is to think about 10 years from now. Not tomorrow, but 10 years from now. And if you're trying to figure out, like, what do I want to do with the majority of my time, right? So what sort of business do I want to start, or what career do I want to get into, or what do I want to pursue? Ask yourself, with each of those things that you've listed, ask yourself, where, if it's 10 years from now, how do I feel about this, right? About each of them. And then ask yourself, how would I feel if I made this my choice? Like, if I'm doing it full time in 10 years, how would I feel if I'm doing it full time in 10 months from now? How would that feel? And then how would I feel if I'm doing it full time in 10 days? Now, some of them might be things that you want to do, you're like, but I want to do this now, and I want to do this now, and I want to do this now. And so another perspective is to remember that you don't have to do everything at one time, right? So you can even break up your life. And this is what people who are multi-potentialites, or scanners, as some people call them. So people who have a lot of different interests and like learning more than anything else, or starting things new. You can break your life up and you can say, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to focus on this for the next 3 years. Then I'm going to focus on this for the next 3 years. Then I'm going to focus on this for the next 3 years. So that's another way you can do it, is kind of think about like doing things chronologically if there are things that require a lot. Or you can always just pick one, make that your main focus, and then just do a little something on the side as you need it.
For sure. I never thought about doing something for just a little while, and then like having a deadline or a time frame that you were going to do that. I guess I've kind of thought about business that way, because for me, I never wanted to work. I never wanted to go to school. I wanted to be a mom. And I'm like, I'm going to be a stay-at-home mom. That's what I'm going to do. And my parents are like, what if that doesn't work out? Like, maybe you should go to college, like, just in case. And then here I am, almost 35 years old, and it never worked out. So it was a good thing, right? Good thing I did that just in case.
What about time? How do you have time and energy for taking on something like this, especially if you have kids or a husband or wife and already have a full-time job? Business coach Olivia Powell tells us how to work everything in with plenty of time left over.
As we know, INFJs can be very hard workers, and we can, I think in the profile it does say we can burn out easily. So energy is actually really important for us. And so I know for me, I burnt out my first business because I just didn't stop. And it's so important to stop and rest and fill up your cup, and then energetically be able to jump back on the bandwagon the next time. Do you know what I mean? And that's so important for longevity in your business. Like this is why I think a lot of people crash and burn when they're side hustling, is because it's like, oh, I'm working a full-time job. How am I supposed to have the time to start and run a side hustle, especially if I've got a family and I've got commitments and I've got responsibilities? And, you know, that's where I was at only a year ago. I was like, how do I run a side hustle when I'm working full-time and doing overtime? I'm wanting to look after my fitness. I want to maintain friendships and relationships with family. Like, how do you squeeze all this in, you know? I'm very passionate about this topic because that was the big thing that held me back initially when I first wanted to start a side hustle. Apart from all the fear, it was like, well, practically, how am I supposed to even do this? Like, my job takes 40 hours a week. I've got to sleep, I've got to eat, I've got to travel. Like, how does that even work, you know?
Yeah.
But what I like to do is actually break it down for people so they can kind of realize there's actually more time available to them than what they think. You know, so in a normal week, right, we have 168 hours available to us, right? So it's a lot of time. When you take away 40 hours of work a week, so full-time equivalent, and you take away, if you're sleeping approximately 7 hours a night, that's 49 hours a week that you take out, right? And then if you travel 1 hour a day to and from work, that's 5 hours out of the week. If you happen to exercise 5 days a week, 1 hour a day, that's also 5 hours out. And if you grocery shop, you know, your physical self rather than ordering online, that could be like approximately like 2 hours, right, to do the full grocery shop. So that leaves 67 hours left for the rest of that 1 week. And that's nearly, if you put it into working hours, that's actually 8 working days left available to you. So we've taken out the mandatory things, right? The major things that you have to do, like if you have to, you know, work your job, you have to travel, you have to do all that sort of stuff. If you take out exercise, that's more time available to you. Not that I recommend that because that's important for your health and stuff, but 8 working days. So when I researched how much TV the average, it was actually American because US stats because I couldn't find Aussies, probably the same though. In 2017 on average, people spent 3 hours and 58 minutes a day watching TV. And US adults are watching 5 hours and 4 minutes of television on average per day. So that's 35.5 hours a week, which is nearly another working week, which is insane. So you can actually get apps which track the amount of time you're on social media. So if you're getting, like, you know, trapped in the scroll hole, so to speak, on Facebook, wasting your time there, spending all night watching Netflix, like there's actually more time available than we think there is. So for example, if you're going to work and doing all the things, coming home watching 4 to 5 hours of Netflix or, you know, Foxtel or Stan or TV or whatever overnight, right, you can literally use 2 hours of that to build your business, you know, and you can do it maybe nearly, like for me, the way I did it is I did it, now that I know better, this is how I would run things differently. So when I did work a 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, I would work about 2 hours approximately a night in my business, right? So posting on social media, getting back to messages, getting all that sort of stuff happening. And then on the weekend, I would take 1 full day. Like this is what I would do now. I didn't do it this way before, but this is how I would suggest it. I just worked all the time before. It was crazy. But if I did it again, it would be 1 day on the weekend that I would commit to my business, and then 1 day off from everything. 1 day off from all obligations, anything that I needed to do. It was like not going to happen that day. It was a me day, like just to recharge, ready for the next week to come.
Yeah.
So if you think about it, you've got every day after work and then one full day on the weekends. That's enough to actually build a business and earn some money and get things going, you know. So it's just about making it a priority and being committed to your dream. Because there comes a point in time where you have to reach a pain threshold. It's like, can I keep working this job that's sucking the life out of me, is soul sucking, is not what I want to do, is repetitive, or, you know, whatever, for the next 40 plus years of my life? And if the answer is no, it's time to start doing something now about it and getting that side hustle going. And it's okay if your side hustle takes a bit longer than what you think. At least you're not giving up, you know, and just settling for a life you're not happy with.
I was shocked when Olivia went through all of the time we have every week. I never would have imagined that there are 67 additional hours in the week. It really is all about being committed, and how bad do you want it? Another big challenge that INFJs face in business is networking. Personal brand coach Bryn Benito breaks down her experience with networking and what she recommends that you do as well.
What kind of strategies do you have for networking, especially for somebody who's just starting out? Like, where would you go to connect with people, and how would you do that?
So I actually wrote a blog post a couple weeks ago called "Networking Sucks, Do This Instead." And I wrote that because I did spend 10 weeks going to small business networking groups, as I alluded to earlier, and it didn't work for me. I spent a lot of time preparing my pitch. I had an awesome pitch. I had awesome business cards. People would come up to me after the pitching sessions. And some people would come up to me specifically because they liked my business cards, or they said I did a really good pitch. But I think I don't know what it was exactly that I didn't get many email subscribers, and I definitely didn't get any clients from that. I think it was, at the end of the day, people could tell that my energy was so maxed out by spending the time that I did going to the group networking events, that I was unwilling to devote a significant more amount of time going to the coffee chats, as they would call them, and going to one-on-one meetings. So what I recommend that people do instead, if they identify as any kind of introvert or as an INFJ specifically, this works really well for me. What I do is I will search LinkedIn and Facebook for people that are in a similar space as I am, but it's slightly different. And I reach out to them to connect on what we have in common and what I really like about what they're doing. So on that blog post that I referenced, Networking Sucks, Do This Instead, I talk about how to leverage LinkedIn to do this. So what I recommend for LinkedIn is that you search for people in your industry by using the search bar that LinkedIn has. And then when you find someone you want to reach out to, you first request to connect with them. That's so you can kind of get on their radar. And then when you request to connect, also send them a note of like 2 sentences saying what you like about them, and say something like 2 sentences about what you like about them, and say you'd love to connect. And then if they connect with you, then you follow up with a longer message, and you can follow up with a longer message because they're now connected with you. You say who you are, what you like about their profile, and ask them for a conversation, and explicitly say that it's a short, like I call it a speed networking call, and I max it out at 10 minutes. And I tell them 2 questions that I would like to ask them in the networking call. And I tell them the exact questions that I'd like to ask, because some people are super busy and they're not going to talk to you, but they still want to help you out. So that gives them an out to answer the questions in the message. But a lot of times, most of the time that I do this, people do get on a call with me. And So I use the 2 questions that I wrote that I would ask them. I use them kind of as my INFJ crutch. So just in case I kind of freeze up and I don't know what to say to them, I can refer back to those 2 questions that I formulated because I looked at their profile and I looked at some that they blogged about or some kind of social post that they wrote. And I keep the questions really high level, like, what do you like about this thing, or what is your biggest challenge about this thing? My experience is that that will lead to much longer conversations, and oftentimes it's the beginning of a relationship, which is so important for when you're working as an entrepreneur and by yourself. And then I also learned that it's such a hassle if you have to go back and forth with someone about when to schedule the call. So I recommend using an app to link with your calendar that will allow people to book a call with you, and then will also send out reminder emails and reminder texts. And you can also embed a Zoom link or whatever app you want to use to chat with people. I also recommend doing a video call because so much of our communication is verbal. And so I like to quote that 55% of communication, oh, I'm sorry, not verbal, is visual. So I like to quote that 55% of communication is visual. You don't have that visual component to the communication, then you're really losing out on being memorable and standing apart from all the other people that person might connect with.
Yes, I just want to jump in here real quick and say that's why I'm doing all of my podcasts on video as well, because which you can find at youtube.com/The Quiet Ones Podcast. And that's because it helps me to do the interviews to see the people that I'm talking to. It makes so much of a difference to connect with you when you can see somebody. I used to hate videos, and I still kind of hate them because I don't like being on video. But I love being able to see somebody when I'm talking to them. It helps to connect so much.
Yeah. And I find that when I am able to talk with someone on video, the conversations are a lot richer. And then I, being a visual person, I will think back to my chat with that person. I'll envision their face or their gestures when they're talking to me in my head, and so that makes it more likely that I'll follow up with them as well.
The best thing that you can do for yourself and for your business is to be more of who you really are, to embrace your true self. Career coach Kristen Magnus tells us this is the absolute best thing that you can do.
I feel like part of my approach with people too is, and I've been really doing this myself, is just embracing who you are and allowing yourself to be more of who you are. I think I sent you an article that also supported that HBR article around how it really pays to be yourself in the workplace more than ever, right? And just like the freedom of, like, I know a lot of organizations are trying to create environments where people feel like inclusive environments, right? Of, belonging. But I think also, so that's very helpful, right? If you have an organization that is working to do that and create that space for you. But also I think you have to, on some level, give yourself permission to be yourself, right? To stop trying to be, and for me, and when you think about like, Myers-Briggs, there are some of those elements that, and I'm sure this is true with everybody, right? Like we fail to focus on where we're strong. And instead, sometimes we focus more on what we think are our gaps or our opportunities, right? Or our weaknesses, depending on whatever word, you want to use. And so you're like, well, then how do I be more extroverted? Or how do I, right? And it's like, no, like let's just stop that shit right now. and really focus on like, how can I give myself permission to be more of who I am? Because one, that's who I was made to be or meant to be. And two, like that's where I'm going to offer the most value, right? So how do I focus on that? And so for me, one of the things that makes me who I am is like I have a lot of interest in a lot of different things. And so rather than trying to just limit myself to one thing, I've tried to create a space where I can do more than one thing.
Be more of who you really are. I love that. Our last clip is from Lauren Sapala, and she's going to talk more about this as well, about how self-love is the key to unlock everything.
I think most INFJs are so highly anxious, and that's the way we use the J to self-soothe our anxiety by bringing in the planning and organization. And the going with the flow, it's not that like we're actually that whimsical or that we're that spontaneous like an INFP where we're like, oh, there's so many different options. Let me just dance around with all of them. No, it's that we're trying to keep the harmony. You know, on our own, we have definite preferences. When you introduce a second person into it, we will chameleon to make them happy. And I think a lot of INFJs feel bad about that. Like, we feel weird that we're such chameleons, but that is the way we are wired. That is the way we are most ourselves, is to preserve harmony. INFPs, on the other hand, they can get very stubborn. If an INFP, if their feelings are clashed with their personal feelings on a subject, they can get very resistant and very rebellious and loud. INFJs, not so much. We'll just like, let me keep peace in the moment, and then I'm going to quietly go off and kind of sneakily do what I want to do anyway. And I just won't mention it to the person, and they won't get upset. We're like a little bit more deceptive. We can bring in that deceptive part of us of like, I just want to keep the peace.
Right.
So I'll hide things. INFPs are much more like, that's wrong, and that clashes with my values, and I'm going to let you know it. So it is really, I don't think it's such a PJ thing. I think it's an extroverted, introverted feeling thing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense as to why some people don't really know who we are, because it's like, you know, we've just agreed with what they're saying and we just keep agreeing with it when all, you know, we're actually, without telling them, going to do something else. And then years go by and years go by, and all of a sudden you're this totally different person and they don't know. And it's like, how do you match those two things up? And so many people have asked me that, and I'm like, in my experience, you either continue to go along or you tell them that you're somebody else. And when you tell them that you're somebody else, you risk, this is a really big risk of them saying, yeah, that's not what I thought, and I'm not interested anymore. Which is difficult.
Yeah. That's a really big pitfall for INFJs, is that we will go along, and then underneath the surface, things are festering. And then one day we're like, I'm out of here. You don't understand me. You haven't understood me for 20 years. And the person's like, what happened? What, 20 years?
Right? They're like, I had no clue that anything was going on. I ran into a situation, honestly, with a landlord that I had last year. And I did the same thing. I just went along with what she said and went along. And even though she was breaking a bunch of laws and it was bothering me, and finally I just got to the point where I was like, I'm leaving because you broke the lease and here's what you did. And she was like, I don't even know you at all. And I'm like, well, no, actually, you really don't.
Yeah.
But I'm still leaving.
Yeah, INFJs hide a lot. We have almost, not two people, but we have two parts of us where that extroverted feeling part is very plugged into people, especially our loved ones. And we live to make them happy. We live to please them. But then the intuition, our introverted intuition and introverted thinking are very independent. And that's kept way down deep inside. And we don't really share that with other people. We don't see the need to. Sometimes we get lonely, but then we just kind of go back to the thing we were trying to put together, the puzzle or the pattern. And it doesn't matter so much. So we do keep large parts of ourselves very deep inside.
So how do you get past that? A lot of people calling it like you're being your authentic self. I wrote a blog post about it, about like being fake. And then a different blog post, I was talking about being manipulative, because it's almost like we are being manipulative, and not like in a bad way, and a lot of times not in an intentional way. But that's just really honestly what it is. When you break it down, that's what we're doing. But how do you get past that, where you really share your real self from the beginning so that you don't run into that problem?
Well, that's the thing. I think you have to back up and look at the self-judgment piece. Is it a problem? If someone is like, I feel like no one in my life knows me, and I'm terrified of sharing parts of myself. I feel very lonely. I feel disconnected. I desperately want a, girlfriend or boyfriend, and I can't make that connection, and I hate my life. Then it's a problem. If you're like for me, it's not a problem. Parts of myself are deceptive, and that is when I'm being most myself. So I'm very different around my husband than I am with a client, than I am with my best friend. My husband's an INTJ, my best friend's an ENFJ. I'm very different when I'm with either one of them. And I don't like being with the both of them at the same time, because then I feel very pulled, because when I'm with my husband, I'm much more logical and thinking. When I'm with my ENFJ friend, I'm much more emotional and warm. Both of those versions of me are the real me, but there's many different me's. There's many different facets. And I don't think you have to, with every person be like, I'm 100% real and myself right out of the gate with everybody. Like, if that really means a lot to you, if you're like, yeah, I've thought about it, that's how I want to live my life, it's an important value, cool. If you're like, honestly, my life's not that bad, I'm pretty happy, and sometimes I'm like an ENFJ, and sometimes I'm like an INTJ, and it all shakes out in the end, then you don't have to worry about it. You don't have to sit and beat yourself up that that you're not being authentic or you're being manipulative.
All right, that's all we have for today. Thank you so much for joining us. Please make sure that you go to youtube.com/thequietonespodcast to watch the video interview and to get all of the links for all of the full interviews that we shared in this episode and in the previous one. Also, if you missed the previous episode, there's a link for it there. Make sure that you go back and listen to it. There's so much good information. If you're interested in starting your own business, I really recommend that you check out the blog, the How to Blog Challenge that I have going on. There's so much information in there about it, and it's all specific to introverts, to INFJs, and it will help you so much. It's a lot of my personal experience and experience from people that I've coached and learned from as well. You can find all of the information for it at infjwoman.com, and there's a link for it in the show notes. Thank you again for listening, and we will see you again next week.